The stranger beneath the sky dome. The storm had passed, but the land was still wet and broken. The plastic shields of the farm dome were cracked. Cold wind whistled through the holes. Eli stood on a ladder, tightening the bolts and sealing the edges with patch tape. His hands were rough, his face tired. Life on the edge of human territory was not easy, especially for a man raising a daughter alone. Lily, his 10-year-old girl, was inside the small house, drawing something on the glass wall with her finger. The dome farm grew more dust than crops lately. Rain didn't fall here, not naturally. But last night, lightning hit the sky generators, and for a moment real water had touched the ground. Eli wiped sweat from his brow, even though the air was cold. He climbed down the ladder slowly, back aching. Just as he stepped onto the ground, Lily opened the door and whispered, "Dad, someone's out there." Eli froze. "Out where?" Lily pointed past the dome, near the rocks. "She's not human." Eli's hand went to the hook near the door. His old plasma rifle, scratched old, but it still worked. He grabbed it and looked Lily in the eyes. "Stay inside. Lock the door." "No matter what." She nodded, eyes wide. Eli stepped out slowly, his boots crunching over the wet ground. The sun was going down, painting the sky in orange and violet. Beyond the farm's edge, he saw something moving near the rocks. Barely a shadow at first. He raised his rifle. Then he saw her. An alien woman. Her skin had a soft silver tone. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly in the dusk. She wore torn clothes, blood on her sleeve, and she held a small bundle against her chest. It was a child. The woman's legs shook as she stepped forward. She looked at Eli, eyes full of fear, but also hope. Eli didn't speak. He didn't lower the gun either. The alien woman opened her mouth, her voice barely a breath. "Please, don't let them take my daughter." And then she collapsed. Eli rushed forward, heart pounding. He kneeled beside her, checked for a pulse. Still breathing, but weak. The child in her arms was unconscious, skinny, pale, alive, but barely. Eli looked around. No sign of anyone else. No tracks, no ships. Just silence and wind. He picked up the woman gently, balancing the child with one arm, and carried them both inside. Lily had already unlocked the door and pulled blankets from the couch. "You saw her," she said softly. "She's hurt. And the girl." Eli laid them on the ground carefully. He pulled out his med kit. Not made for alien biology, but it was all he had. He scanned their vitals. Bad, dehydrated, exhausted. The girl was worse. He injected a neutral stim, fluids, nutrition, anything to keep them stable. Lily sat next to the little alien girl. She reached out and touched her hand. "She's cold," Lily whispered. "Like glass," Eli nodded. "She's been through something." They both have. They worked quietly, wrapping the two in thermal blankets, placing a heater nearby. Hours passed. The storm outside was gone, but the questions were just beginning. "Who do you think she is?" Lily asked. "I don't know," Eli said. "But someone was chasing them. Do you think they'll come here?" "I hope not." Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep beside the alien child, Eli sat alone at the edge of the room. The rifle was in his hands. He didn't close his eyes, not even for a second. Then, just before dawn, the alien woman stirred. Her eyes opened wide. She sat up fast, confused, breathing hard. Eli stood, holding his hands up. "You're safe. You're in my home." She looked around, panic on her face. She saw her daughter sleeping, then saw Lily beside her, hand resting gently on the girl's arm. The alien mother's breath slowed. For a moment, peace, but then she screamed, one word, loud, sharp, full of fear. "Hunter!" Eli raised the rifle, eyes darting around. The scream echoed through the dome, and somewhere far beyond the farm, something in the shadows heard her. "She's not who you think she is." The scream still rang in Eli's ears, as the woman stared at him with wide, wild eyes. She had jolted upright like a soldier fresh from war, chest rising and falling with every breath, sweat clinging to her brow despite the cold. Eli stood frozen at first, rifle still in hand but pointed at the ground. Lily stirred in her sleep beside the alien child, unaware of the chaos that had just returned to the quiet dome. The alien woman's scream was not just one of fear, it was recognition. "Hunter!" she had cried, and that single word sent a storm through Eli's mind. Was she talking about him? Or was there someone else out there? Someone coming? He took a careful step forward, hands raised again. "You're safe here. No one is going to hurt you," he said in the calmest voice he could muster, but his heart thudded like a warning drum. The woman blinked, dazed and breathing heavily, and then her eyes locked onto her daughter, still lying wrapped in the blanket, cheeks pale, mouth slightly open. She rushed forward on her knees and placed both hands on the girl's tiny face, whispering in a strange language that Eli couldn't understand. But he didn't need to. It was the language of a mother terrified of losing her child. She was checking for breath, for pulse, for anything, when the girl stirred slightly under the touch. The alien woman broke into sobs, shaking from relief, holding her child tightly. Eli lowered his rifle and backed away, giving her space. He stepped outside the room and leaned against the dome wall, staring out into the desert plains beyond the farm. The land was silent, but the silence now felt dangerous. He had questions, far too many. Who was this woman? Who was after her? And why had she called out the word hunter with such terror? He returned after a few minutes, not wanting to leave Lily unguarded. The woman was calmer now, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside her daughter, her silver-toned face exhausted and wet with tears. When Eli came in, she watched him closely, eyes cautious but no longer panicked. "I'm Eli," he said gently. "This is my daughter Lily. You're safe now, but I need to know who you are." The woman didn't reply at first. She looked at Lily, then at her own daughter, and finally at Eli again. "Tharia," she said at last, voice low and raspy. "My name is Tharia." Eli nodded, encouraging her. "And her?" Tharia looked down and ran a trembling hand through her daughter's hair. "Maya," she whispered. "Her name is Maya." Lily stirred at the sound and sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. When she saw Tharia and Maya awake, she smiled with a kind warmth only children could give. "She's pretty," Lily said. "What happened to her?" Tharia's shoulders slumped, the weight of her past visible in the way her spine bent. "They chased us. From the highlands. They shot down our ship. We ran for days," her voice cracked. "She hasn't eaten. I tried to protect her." Eli handed her a warm nutrient pack from the cabinet. "Let her have this." "Slowly," he said. Tharia hesitated but took it. She helped Maya sip, careful not to give her too much too fast. The child barely moved but accepted the liquid. It was a small miracle. Eli sat down across from them, arms crossed over his knees. "Why were they chasing you?" he asked, and this time Tharia's eyes hardened. Not with anger, but with fear, history, and a hidden truth. "They say I'm a criminal," she said. "A traitor. A war agent." She shook her head slowly. "But I'm just a mother who wanted to save her daughter." Eli listened, jaw tight. He'd heard stories like this before. On the outer colonies, war left behind shadows. People who didn't belong anywhere anymore. "Who exactly are they?" he asked, voice even. Tharia looked straight at him now, as if making a choice. "The Council. The same who brought peace. And pain." She paused. "I used to work in the royal labs of Valari Prime. I built systems to heal. To feed. When the war began, I stayed neutral. But neutrality was punished. They burned my name. Took my husband. I ran with Maya." Her voice trembled. "But I know things. I saw plans, secrets, that's why they hunt me." Eli stayed quiet, absorbing her every word. If what she said was true, she wasn't just some lost widow. She was a threat to powerful people. And now she was under his roof. Hours passed. Tharia tended to Maya, and Lily stayed by their side, handing her water and blankets, asking gentle questions. The two girls didn't speak much. Maya said nothing at all, but their eyes seemed to understand each other. Lily had grown up without a mother. Maya had lost her world. There was a silent bond forming, invisible but strong. Later, while Tharia rested, Eli ran a deeper scan of her blood using his old military med kit. The scanner beeped once, then displayed a symbol he hadn't seen in years. Priority target. Federation watch list. His breath caught. It was real. She wasn't lying. She was marked, officially. That meant someone might be coming. Soon. Eli shut off the scanner and looked over at the two sleeping girls. His daughter. And now maybe someone else's child too. He didn't know what was coming, but one thing was clear. This was no longer just about survival. This was about choice. And Eli had just made his. He would protect them both. He would protect her. Whatever Tharia had run from had now arrived on his land. And no matter who came next, they'd find him ready. The hunters come at night. The wind outside had changed. It no longer moved like nature. It pulsed, low and steady, like something watching, breathing. Eli stood outside the dome with his old rifle slung across his shoulder and a worn pair of night vision goggles pressed to his eyes. The scan grid on the horizon was clean, but something deep in his gut whispered otherwise. It had been a full day since Tharia had told him her story, since he had confirmed through the scan that the Federation still marked her as a threat, a fugitive. Eli had once trusted that system, fought under its banner, obeyed its orders. But now, after what he'd seen and heard, he knew this wasn't about justice. It was about silence. They didn't want her punished. They wanted her erased. Inside the dome, Tharia sat quietly beside Maya, spooning a light broth into her daughter's mouth one slow drop at a time. The girl had opened her eyes again, though her lips were cracked, her body weak, and her words still lost somewhere between pain and survival. Lily, ever curious and kind, had brought a small, glowing cube to her, a memory toy Eli had crafted long ago to calm his daughter during the hard nights after her mother passed. Maya had simply held it close, her little fingers gripping it like it was the only soft thing left in her life. Tharia's eyes watched everything. Maya's breathing, Lily's kindness, Eli's distant steps by the glass walls. She was a mother who had lost too much to blink again. Eli returned just before sunset, his boots heavy with mud, his expression unreadable. "The scanners are clean," he said, but his voice didn't match the words. Tharia looked up from her place near the heater. "What do you feel?" she asked. He hesitated, then answered honestly, "Watched." That was enough. Tharia didn't panic, but her spine straightened. Her hand drifted closer to Maya's chest, where a small hidden pouch was sewn into her daughter's coat. Eli noticed the movement and filed it in the back of his mind. There was more to this child than Tharia had admitted, and she was guarding it like the last fire in winter. Night fell in layers, and with it came the cold and the questions. The farm dome creaked under the shifting temperatures, the repaired shield still holding but not without complaint. Eli turned on the motion alarms around the perimeter. He had only 6 working sensors patched together from scrap and luck, but they'd held off desert raiders before. He didn't tell Tharia that some of them had started blinking randomly an hour ago, like something was testing them. As he finished setting the final sensor near the east rock wall, he heard something strange. Metal scraping gently over stone, and then a soft, purposeful click, like claws adjusting grip. He froze. Then silence. He returned to the house faster than usual, his jaw tight. "Lock the inner doors," he said to Tharia. She didn't argue. Her instincts were sharp, sharpened by fear and loss. She placed Maya behind the reinforced storage hatch beneath the floor and gave her a kiss on the forehead. Lily watched all of it silently, gripping Eli's hand. "Are they here?" she whispered. Eli didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a small flashlight and knelt. "Go into the hatch with Maya. Stay there. Don't come out until I say." Lily shook her head, eyes wet, but obeyed. She knew the look in her father's eyes. It was the same one he'd had the day her mother died. Controlled fear, measured strength. Minutes passed like hours. Then a knock. Not frantic, not desperate. A steady knock on the dome's outer panel. Eli moved to the console and activated the outer camera. 2 men stood outside. Human. Both wore patched jackets and dusty boots, but their postures were too perfect, too clean for real desert traders. One of them had a metal eye implant with a blinking blue lens, and the other carried what looked like a coil rifle disguised under a tarp. They smiled into the camera. "Evening," the one with the eye said. "We're looking for someone. You seen any crash survivors? A couple travelers, maybe? Paid good credits to get out here." Eli leaned toward the mic and spoke flatly. "This is private land. You need to leave." The man chuckled. Of course, we just figured you being all the way out here. Maybe you've seen something. Tall woman, silver skin, with a kid, probably scared, definitely dangerous." Tharia stood behind the wall, silent, her breath slow, like she'd stopped being a person and became a stone. Eli turned off the mic and flicked the door lock into override. "They're not traitors," he said, voice low. "They're bounty hunters." She nodded. "They always come in pairs. One talks, the other kills." Eli checked the ammo on his rifle. 2 charges left in the main cell, maybe 4 more in the drawer if they hadn't degraded. He cursed under his breath. "They'll try to circle around, cut power, force the shield to flicker. If I open the door, they'll kill me and take you." Tharia reached for something in her sleeve and revealed a small crystal-like spike. "If they take me, they will hurt Maya. I won't let them. This can destroy the memory chip she carries. Her gift. Her curse." Eli stared at her. "What is she?" Tharia looked at him, the full truth rising behind her eyes like a breaking wave. "She is the last genetic key to a weapon that the Council buried long ago, and they want her alive because she can open it." Before Eli could respond, the lights flickered once, twice, then blackness. The hunters had begun. Eli raised the rifle, heart calm but pounding. He turned to Tharia. "Hide. I'll deal with them." Tharia opened her mouth, but he cut her off. "I've lost everything once. I won't lose again." Outside, the wind rose and death came walking toward the dome. A deal with Shadow's darkness settled over the dome like a slow, suffocating tide. Every light, every system, every pulse of artificial life inside the structure had gone dead in one instant, leaving only the cold hum of silence behind. Eli didn't flinch. Years in forgotten wars and border world raids had taught him that silence was not safety. It was the sound before violence. The rifle in his hands glowed dimly, powered by a backup cell he'd salvaged years ago. Not enough for a battle, but enough for one shot. One choice. One chance. He moved through the house slowly, deliberately, watching the windows, the cracks, the shadows. Outside, the dust swirled in weak moonlight, and somewhere between the rocks, he knew they were waiting, watching, preparing. Tharia stood in the corner, her hand resting on the hidden floor hatch where Maya and Lily were hidden, protected behind layers of steel, plastic, and childhood prayers. Her face was unreadable, but her breath was steady. She was no longer running, she was standing her ground. "They won't stop," she whispered. "Even if you kill these 2, more will come. The Council won't let a weapon walk free." Eli turned his head slightly. "Then maybe it's time to stop running and start fighting." She stepped forward slowly, the glow from the emergency panel casting faint silver on her skin. "You don't know what Maya is, what she carries inside her blood. She wasn't just born. She was created, designed. Not to fight, but to choose who lives and who dies if the weapon is ever activated." Her eyes shimmered. "And they need her to say yes. That's why they won't kill her. Not yet." Eli took this in without a word. The girl downstairs, the one who had clutched Lily's hand and slept like any other frightened child, was not just a girl. She was the last living code for Yao, something ancient, dangerous and powerful enough that entire fleets had burned to bury it. The war he thought had ended years ago was still echoing through her heartbeat, and now it was in his house. A sudden clang echoed from outside. Then another, metal boots landing on steel steps near the dome's side hatch. The hunters were moving in. Eli motioned to Tharia. "Go down with the girls. Don't come out unless I'm dead or you hear my voice twice." She looked at him for a long, silent second, then nodded and vanished behind the hatch. He closed it quietly, sealing them in, and stepped into the living room. He crouched behind the console and waited. The knock came again, this time louder, more forceful. "Last chance, farmer," the voice crackled through the broken comms. "Give her up and we'll leave your kid alive." Eli didn't answer. He just adjusted the rifle against his shoulder, aimed at the door, and waited. His mind flashed to Lily's face, to her small hand holding Maya's, to the way she had smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. No one was going to take that away from her. The dome door hissed, sparks flying as its seal was overridden. A flash grenade rolled inside, but Eli was ready. He turned his face, shielded his eyes, and fired into the smoke. One figure dropped instantly, armor cracking against the floor. The second hunter dove behind the storage crates, returning fire with sharp, piercing shots that melted metal and left scorch marks across the walls. The room became a storm of chaos, light and shadow, silence and thunder. Eli moved like a man who had nothing left to lose. He used every corner, every memory of his home to dodge, return fire, and hold his ground. But the rifle was old, and the charge was dying. As he slid behind the kitchen table for cover, the final warning light blinked red. One shot left. The second hunter spoke again. "You're not military anymore, old man. Give her to us and maybe you'll see your daughter again." Eli looked up at the ceiling, took a deep breath, and shouted, "Now!" The hatch burst open behind the crates. Tharia leapt from the shadows like a blade made of fire and purpose. She had no weapon, only the crystal spike she had hidden from Eli. The hunter turned too late. She drove the spike into his shoulder, and his body convulsed as the energy inside it tore through his nervous system. He dropped, twitching, and the silence returned. For a long moment, neither Tharia nor Eli moved. Then Eli stood up, face covered in sweat, his shirt burned near the sleeve. He looked at her, then at the fallen bodies. "You could have stayed hidden," he said. She breathed hard. "And leave you to fight alone? No. I've run enough." They dragged the bodies out beyond the dome perimeter and buried them under rocks. They said no words. There was no time, no comfort, only purpose. Later that night, after they had checked every system, after the lights slowly came back online, Eli sat with Tharia in the kitchen. The girls were asleep again, too tired to understand the war that had passed just inches above their heads. Tharia held a cup of old brewed herb tea in her hands. "More will come," she said. "They'll track the ship they came on." Eli nodded. "Then we'll need a new plan." She looked at him, searching his eyes. "Why are you helping me, Eli? You could have sold me. You could have saved yourself." He stared into the quiet lights, then spoke in a low, steady voice. "Because once, when the war took everything from me, someone told me that a good man isn't the one who wins, but the one who protects what's worth loving, even when he knows he'll lose." She said nothing, but her hand brushed his on the table. Not romantic, not yet, but a connection, a choice. They didn't know where the road ahead would lead, but one thing was certain. This wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about standing, fighting, and maybe, finally healing, together. Flight through fire. The days that followed were not filled with peace, but with preparation. The bounty hunters were gone, buried deep in the dust beyond the farm's edge, but Eli and Tharia both knew it was only a matter of time before more came. The Federation never left a trail cold, not when secrets were involved, not when a living key like Maya still breathed. Tharia worked on salvaging what remained of her broken pod ship, hidden under sand and cracked stone not far from where she'd crashed weeks ago. Eli provided tools, old engine parts, and cables he'd collected over years of isolation. They worked in silence often, but it wasn't cold anymore. It was the silence of shared survival, of two people growing to trust each other, not just because they had to, but because they wanted to. Inside the dome, Lily and Maya formed something fragile and beautiful, an unspoken sisterhood. Lily read her stories from old Earth books, stories about strong girls and broken stars, about warriors who never gave up and lonely dragons who just wanted a friend. Maya still didn't speak much, but her silence had changed. It was no longer wrapped in fear, it carried curiosity now. She would smile sometimes, especially when Lily made silly faces or gave her scraps of fabric to turn into dolls. Sometimes Maya would even reach for Lily's hand, holding it as if drawing strength from a new world that didn't want to use her, but simply loved her. But love alone wasn't enough. The ship was beyond full repair. Tharia knew it. Eli knew it. And even Maya seemed to understand when she stared at the twisted remains of the wing engine. "We need parts," Tharia said one night as she sketched wiring diagrams on Eli's old table. "Rare ones. Reactor coils, plasma stabilizers, titanium fusers. The kind you don't find lying in the desert." Eli looked at the list, then looked at her. "There's one place," he said slowly. "Outlaw Depot, 50 clicks west. Old mining hub. Smugglers, thieves, junk traders. If it's not chained to a warship, they probably have it. Tharia raised an eyebrow. And they don't kill outsiders? Eli gave a dry smile. They kill everyone. But I used to know someone there. Someone who owes me. The journey began at dawn. Eli, Tharia, and Maya left in a rust-covered sand cruiser, packed with barter gear, fuel cells, and old earth tools that still held black market value. Lily stayed behind, hidden with a trusted drone system watching the dome. I'll protect Maya's sister, she told her father before they left, eyes strong beyond her years. You bring her home. The ride was long, crossing dead lands and storm-bent valleys where metal bones of old wars still rusted under the red sun. When they reached the depot, it rose from the horizon like a broken jaw. Towers half collapsed, smoke drifting from vents, gun turrets scanning the skies. Traders yelled in alien tongues, selling power cells, starship fragments, even captured drones. The place smelled of oil, fire, and fear. They found him near a crashed transport, sitting on a metal crate like a king of trash, Daxon Reeve, former Federation mechanic turned scavenger lord. He was tall, dark-skinned, one eye replaced with a golden lens that blinked with each word. Eli Mercer, he said, voice smooth like poison wrapped in silk. I thought you were dead. Eli gave a tight nod. Not yet. I need parts. Daxon laughed. Everyone needs parts. What makes you special? Then his gaze slid toward Tharia and everything changed. The lens on his eye zoomed in. Recognition flashed across his face. You brought her here? He whispered. You really are insane. Eli kept his voice level. I need stabilizers. 3 cores, and a jump cell. Daxon stared at Tharia. You know who she is, don't you? She's worth more than every ship in this yard. Tharia stepped forward. Help us and we leave quietly. Daxon grinned. No one's quiet in my yard. He led them inside his bunker past rows of stolen tech and faded flags. The parts were there, more than enough to make a ship fly again. Tharia's eyes lit up as she inspected the coils, and for a moment hope returned. But Eli had been watching Daxon's hands. Too still, too slow. And then he saw it. The silent signal. A flick of the wrist toward a camera in the corner. Run, Eli whispered. The room exploded into sound. Sirens, footsteps, metal gates closing. Betrayal. Eli grabbed Tharia's hand and pulled her into the storage hall. Maya clung to her mother's arm as lights burst around them. This way, Eli shouted, blasting a lock panel and kicking open a vent tunnel. They crawled through narrow metal paths, sparks flying above as guards shouted orders in 5 languages. A bullet clipped Eli's shoulder. He growled in pain but didn't stop. Tharia shoved Maya ahead of her, whispering words Eli couldn't understand but somehow felt. Words of strength, of endurance, of love that refused to break. They emerged near the edge of the depot where old bikes were chained. Eli smashed the lock, hot-wired the nearest speeder, and helped Tharia and Maya on. Hold tight, he yelled, and then they were flying. Metal wheels screaming against sand, engines roaring, bullets flying like angry bees behind them. The chase was brutal. Speeders followed, drones launched. One drone clipped their back tire, spinning them sideways into a canyon pass. The bike flipped. Eli landed hard, coughing dust, ribs screaming. Tharia shielded Maya with her own body, scraping her back against jagged rock. But they were alive, breathless, bloody, burning with rage. Eli stood first, rifle gone, shoulder bleeding. He helped Tharia up. We have to move, he said. They'll scan for heat. Tharia cradled Maya, who had opened her eyes, but this time her mouth parted too. And one word escaped. Mother. It was the first time Eli had heard her speak, and it shattered him. Because in that moment, in that broken canyon with fire behind them and war ahead, Eli saw something not even the Federation understood. This wasn't about ships, or weapons, or bloodlines. This was about 2 daughters, and the home they both deserved. The truth in the stars. The desert night wrapped around them like a silent grave as they moved deeper into the abandoned canyon miles away from the outlaw depot, every step heavy, every breath sharp, with the weight of everything that had just happened pressing down on their chests. The stars above were so close it felt like you could touch them with your hand, bright and sharp against the darkness, scattered like broken diamonds across the endless black ocean of sky. Eli led the way through a narrow ruin path carved long ago by an unknown alien race. stone pillars rising tall like forgotten guardians watching their slow, desperate passage. Tharia held Maya close to her chest as she walked. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Maya's eyes were awake, aware, filled with a strange and deep glow as if the stars themselves lived inside her. Her small fingers curled onto her mother's wrist, and she didn't tremble anymore. She was calm, too calm, as if she was not afraid of anything in this moment. And that frightened Eli more than anything else. They eventually reached the entrance of an ancient structure half swallowed under sand and broken stone. A hidden sanctuary Tharia knew about but had never reached until now. Symbols covered the walls, old runic patterns pulsing faintly with blue light when Maya stepped near them, the energy inside the structure awakening like a long sleeping animal recognizing her blood. Eli stopped and stared in disbelief as the stone doors slid open without any force or command. Maya had activated the entrance simply by existing, simply by being who she was. Tharia looked at Eli, and there was no longer any room left for half-truth or partial truth. This was the moment where everything needed to be said. Inside the ruin they found warm, glowing lights embedded in crystal formations, and old data archives sealed in liquid amber cores untouched for centuries. This place was not just a sanctuary. This was the birthplace of the ancient weapon. This was where it was designed. This was where it began. Tharia finally spoke, her voice echoing softly against the crystal walls. Eli, Maya was created here. She is not just a key, she is the final voice for a weapon that can erase entire star systems with a single choice. A weapon built long before the Federation existed. The Council discovered this place years ago, and they wanted to command it. They tried to use Maya, but her father stopped them. He stole her and ran, and when he died, I continued running. Eli listened quietly, unable to blink, unable to breathe fully because the truth was so much bigger than anything he could have imagined. He had thought this was just about survival. He had thought this was just about protecting a mother and daughter. But this was about the fate of entire galaxies, and the child resting against Tharia's shoulder was holding the scale in her small hands. Maya turned her head slowly and looked up at them both. Her voice was soft, but it felt like it echoed through every corner of the ruin, like every stone leaned in to hear her speak. I don't want to destroy anyone. I don't want to hurt anyone. Her little fingers shook as she spoke again. I just want a home. Those words shattered something inside Eli, because in all of this cosmic war and panic and power, Maya was just a child who wanted safety, who wanted love, who wanted what every child in every universe wanted. Tharia touched her daughter's cheek gently, tears slipping down her face. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming pain of knowing how unfair life had been to this tiny soul. Eli walked closer and placed his hand on Maya's small shoulder. You will have a home, he whispered firmly, his voice calm like a quiet oath, like a vow that dug itself into the very foundation of fate itself. You will have peace. I will protect you both. I swear it. But before he could say anything more, an alarm in his wrist device began pulsing violently. The Federation had locked onto their location. They had traced the speeder crash. They were minutes away. Tharia looked at Eli, panic rising again. They will take her. They will force her. They will wake the weapon. Eli shook his head. No, not while I breathe. But Tharia grabbed his hand suddenly, her grip hard, her voice shaking. If they take me, I will die. But you must promise something even harder. To protect Maya even from me if the Council forces control. Eli stayed silent for a long moment because this was not a simple request. This was sacrifice. This was a mother preparing to die so her daughter could live free. He finally nodded. Outside, engines roared in the distance and lights cut across the night like spears ready to strike. The storm was no longer approaching. It was here. Tharia stood tall, eyes blazing with fire and despair and mother's courage. Maya stepped behind Eli, hiding behind his leg, trusting him, choosing him. And in that moment, Eli realized why fate had brought them to him. Because he was a man who had already lost everything once, who understood the price of love, and who would not break this time. The Federation ships landed outside the ancient ruins, and soldiers poured out with weapons drawn. Eli raised his rifle even though he had almost no power cell left. He stood like a shield in front of Maya and Tharia. This wasn't just a fight now. This was destiny colliding with humanity, and humanity was done running. A new family, a new fire. The wind howled through the canyons, thick with dust and the dull, cold scent of fear. The ruins pulsed faintly with ancient energy, whispering warnings from a time when stars were still young. Outside the sanctuary walls, Federation soldiers spread in formation, blasters drawn, helmets sealed, orders sharp in the air. Dropships hovered above the ridge, engines glowing like angry eyes staring down at the last flicker of resistance in a forgotten part of the galaxy. They didn't come to negotiate. They came to take. And they came with the weight of 1,000 systems behind them. But inside the ancient ruin, 3 people stood their ground. A human, an alien widow, and a child the stars had been waiting for. Eli tightened the last seal on the vault door, the only exit that led into the ruin's core. Behind it, Maya was hidden again with Lily. Eli had called her in through a secret beacon after escaping the outpost ambush. The girl had arrived 2 hours ago, dusty, brave, and clutching a stolen drone that had helped her bypass patrols. She had climbed through enemy lines just to stand beside her father and protect the sister she had chosen. Now both girls were tucked away in the heart of the sanctuary, deep beyond scanners, surrounded by layers of alien shielding that responded only to Maya's presence. But Eli and Tharia stood outside that chamber side by side, waiting to face the Federation storm. Tharia wore no armor. She carried no gun. All she held was the glowing crystal spike she once promised would destroy Maya's link to the ancient weapon. But now she clutched it not as a tool of death, but of choice. "They won't stop," she said again, her voice raw but calm. "Even if we die here, they'll dig deeper. They'll send fleets. They'll keep trying to control her." Eli nodded, tightening his grip on the energy rifle with the last half charge. "Then we don't just fight," he replied. "We show them something they don't understand. We show them what it means to protect, not because of orders, not because of politics, but because of love." The first blast shook the outer wall. Then another. Stone cracked. Lights dimmed. Voices shouted through loudspeakers, demanding surrender. Tharia looked toward the chamber where her daughter slept and whispered a goodbye in her native tongue. Then she reached into her own chest armor and pulled out a second crystal, a memory core. "If I fall," she told Eli, "give this to Maya. It holds the truth. The weapon's origin, the Council's betrayal, the message her father recorded before he died. It will tell her who she is, not what they say she must become." Before Eli could respond, the wall collapsed. Federation soldiers stormed the entrance, armor gleaming, weapons raised. Eli fired first, dropping the lead attacker in a flash of plasma. He ducked behind a pillar, returned fire again, then rolled into cover, dodging a blast that melted half the column. Tharia moved like lightning, using her knowledge of the ruins' layout to trap, delay, and confuse the attackers. At one point, she leapt over a fallen arch, slammed the spike into a soldier's suit, and disabled his comms with a burst of ancient energy. But they were outnumbered, outgunned, and every second the circle closed. Then Eli was hit. A blast tore into his side, spinning him onto the ground. He coughed blood, jaw clenched, body screaming in pain. Tharia rushed to his side, dragging him behind a fallen beam. "Stay with me," she said through tears. "We're not done yet." Eli looked at her through fading vision and shook his head. "Go, protect them. I'll hold them back." Tharia refused. "No, we do this together." But Eli reached into his jacket and handed her the memory crystal. "You gave Maya life. Now give her the truth." His voice dropped, full of pain but more full of love. "Tell her I believed in her." Suddenly, a voice echoed through the ruin, soft, young, and stronger than any weapon. "Stop." Everything paused, the light shifted, and from the inner chamber, Maya walked forward, alone, her hair gently lifted by unseen air currents. Her skin glowed faintly, and every symbol on the walls began to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Soldiers froze. The dropships powered down. Blasters lowered without command. It was as if the entire ruin had come alive to witness this moment. She stood between Tharia and Eli, and for the first time, she spoke not as a child, but as the being the stars had whispered about since her birth. "I don't choose war," Maya said, her voice echoing through the stone. "I don't choose destruction. I choose peace." And then the crystal in Tharia's hand glowed, pulsing once before melting into light, dissolving as if fulfilled. A wave of blue energy spread outward, passing through the soldiers without harming them, only wiping the data from their weapons, their scanners, their tracking gear. Everything the Federation brought to capture her turned to dust. Above, the sky cracked open with a beam of ancient light shooting toward the stars, an alert. A message to the old weapon systems. The key had chosen her path, not war, not death, but life. And in choosing peace, she had broken the control the Federation had sought for generations. The soldiers fell back slowly, unsure, confused, some even laying down their weapons, realizing they weren't standing in front of a weapon anymore, but something greater, a soul, a future, a child who had chosen love over power. Days later, the Federation command issued a full retreat from the region. No one could explain what had happened inside the ruins. Some called it a glitch. Others called it a miracle. But those who were there knew the truth. A girl had spoken, and the stars had listened. Eli sat on the porch of his farm dome again, bandaged but alive, watching the sky. Lily sat beside him, reading an old book aloud, her voice soft. Inside, Tharia was planting a small garden. Maya watered it quietly, humming a tune no one had taught her, like the memory of a world she never saw but always belonged to. Eli smiled as Maya ran up and hugged him from behind, arms around his neck, cheek against his shoulder. She whispered, "Thank you for giving me a home." He turned to her and placed his hand gently over hers. "And thank you," he said, voice warm and full of quiet pride, "for giving us a family, and somewhere beyond the stars, the ancient systems that once waited for war finally slept because the girl who could destroy worlds had chosen to build one instead together, with them home forever."